Okay, I'll start by, I'm going to screen share just to kind of take a look at the agenda for today. All right, so I want to kind of focus most of our time today on artifact number 4. And there's a couple of things I just wanted to introduce. Okay, one of them is the use of what's called idiomatic language or idiomatic expressions. And if, well, hopefully Liv is here today. I couldn't remember if she had something going on, but she shared some song lyrics last week called Read My Mind. And they're very good lyrics. And one of the things that I kind of noticed in them was the kind of use of idiomatic expressions. And idioms are word or expressions that cannot literally be translated and to make sense. And so, for example, there's a longer poem that I want to share called Having It Out with Melancholy. So to have it out with someone we know means you kind of have a pretty major kind of, well, usually it's an argument. You have it out with somebody, like you've got some issues and there's a lot going on. So to have it out with someone is not the same as to have an argument. It like to have it out with somebody means that, or at least it implies that you have some back history that is kind of led up to something that's fairly significant. And so that kind of just got me thinking that, I know a number of you like to write prose, and especially in prose writing, the use of idiomatic expressions actually help create a voice in a character. It can actually make the character seem very authentic and sometimes grounded in a certain region, things like that. So there's a couple poems that I just want to share with you, and they're all in the Dave's file folder for topic 4. And the first one is a poem by Billy Collins, and I can't recall if I've used his work before, but I'm just going to open it up in the, I'm going to open it up in Dave's file folder because it'll read a little easier in that format. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many people have heard of Billy Collins. He's a very, very well-known American poet. The Americans have, I'm trying to remember the expression for it, but there's kind of it's called the Poet Laureate. So the Poet Laureate is a very prestigious job, position. People like Robert Frost have had it. Maya Angelou, I believe, has also been a Poet Laureate of the US. And I don't know who the current one is, but it tends to change every couple of years. And so this poem by Billy Collins is quite interesting because it really reminds you that language, like the English language, has its own idioms, and other languages have idioms that you can't really translate them word for word for them to make sense. So, like, I don't know another language well enough to know what the equivalent of to have it out with somebody is. I don't know if anybody else knows another language well enough to know that particular idiom. But I just want to read a little bit of this. It's called Idiomatic by Billy Collins. It is a big question to pose so early in the morning, or in the light woven by birds, as the Estonians say. But still I must ask, what is my place in life? My seat on the invisible train, as they say in Hungary. I mean, why am I just sitting here in a lawn chair listening to a thrush, the little entertainer of the woods, as the Swiss call him, while out in the world, mobs of people are rushing over bridges, in and out of cities. vegetables grow heavy in their fields, clouds fly across the face of the earth, as we call it in English. And sometimes rockets lift off in the distance, and I mean that quite literally, from the top of the table, as the Portuguese have it. Real rockets rising from the horizon, or the big line, if you're an Australian, leaving behind rich gallons of exhaust smoke, long, smooth trajectories, and always the ocean below, the water machine, as the South Sea Islanders put it. Everything taking place right on schedule by the clock of the devil, as our grandparents were fond of saying. And still here I am, here I sit with my shirt off, the dog at my side, daydreaming, juggling balls of cotton, as they like to say in France. Okay, so I ended up reading the whole thing, but it just kind of gives, to me, it's just something that, like, I've done this a lot in the regular classroom, like used idioms as prompts for writing, because like idioms are, they're really kind of a measure of what kind of command you have of another language. If you can actually, if you can use an idiom properly in another language. And I'm just wondering, is there any of the learners who are here today, like, do you know any idioms in another language? Okay, I saw Olivia, that was a head shake, no?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, how about Trinity?
I don't know.
Okay, and Peyton?
No.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's, no, okay, there's one expression I know in Spanish, which I think is quite an amazing expression. And when a woman gives birth, she gives the light. Like, that's the expression in Spanish, to give birth, is dar la luz, which literally means give the light. And if you think about it, I mean, it's a beautiful expression. So in English, we give birth. In Spanish, you dar la luz. And so I think those idioms really reveal a lot about the kind of, like one of the things that I know I've talked about in reference to, there was an essay called Paging the Self. And one of the things, if you've had a chance to read that essay, it talks about how reading particular things in a certain way actually shapes your sensibilities. And sensibilities is kind of how you see the world. It's how you input things. I guess in some ways it's how you interpret the world and the signals it gives you. So, and language and culture are so much a part of that, and especially idiomatic expressions. So that's one thing I wanted just to bring up. And if other people are still looking for kind of ideas for writing, I put something into the writing prompts folder for topic 4, and it's based around using idiom. We can look at that a bit later. Now, the second poem, and this one I won't read this one entirely, but I want you to look at it because I'm going to share screen again, and it's okay. So Billy Collins, I've done my bit. I mean, he's a much loved poet, and he's whimsical. He's funny, and he's lighthearted in a lot of the subject matter that he addresses in his poetry. Now, this is another one of my favorite poets. Another American poet is Jane Kenyon, and the reason I brought this poem up, I was reminded of. There was a piece of writing I introduced last week called Relieved, and it was that student chapbook. And so Relieved talked about Laura Peterson's addiction and recovery in 12 steps. Okay, so, and this poem here is basically Jane Kenyon's battle with depression. And that's probably it's a lifelong battle with depression. And she divided it into 9 different pieces or sections. And she started off with a quotation from Chekhov, who was a very famous writer, playwright. And so the quotation is, if many remedies are prescribed for an illness, you may be certain that the illness has no cure, which is a pretty powerful send-off to a poem. And so what's interesting with this long poem, and you can look at it more in depth on your own, is she breaks it up in so it's a linear process or a linear format. And it starts off with her as a child, as a baby, in the nursery. And this is one, okay, and the interesting thing about this one, so it starts off with her as an infant, as a baby, and then it moves right into a listing of basically drugs. And so she lists off like almost 10 of them, or over 10 of them. And then this, just a very short description of the different kind of either the taste or different things about them, right? And what I like about this poem a lot is the fact that simply the naming of the different drugs. Some of them I recognize, some of them I don't. Like Prozac, lithium, Xanax, Wellbutrin, Parnate, Nardil, Zoloft. The coated ones smell sweet or have no smell. The powdery ones smell like the chemistry lab at school that made me hold my breath. And to me, like I put this in the agenda, like that to me is it's a snippet. It's just that little image of a high school chemistry lab. And this one here, okay, this is, to me, it's a quotation, suggestion from a friend. You wouldn't be so pressed if you really believed in God. Which to me is just like it's a very powerful section of this poem. And then it's, I don't want to, you can read the whole thing on your own, but what's really interesting is, like to me, like she basically conveys her whole life, her lifelong battle with depression. And even to use the term battle with depression, I mean, that's an idiom that we have created in our language. I don't know what other languages use to describe it, but to me, this is probably the most kind of hopeful piece of the poem, called Wood Thrush. And a wood thrush is a small bird. High on Nardil in June light, I wake at 4, waiting greedily for the first note of the wood thrush. Easeful air presses through the screen with the wild, complex song of the bird. And I'm overcome by ordinary contentment. What hurt me so terribly all my life until this moment? How I love the small, swiftly beating heart of the bird, singing in the great maples, its bright, unequivocal eye. So to me, what makes this such a powerful poem is she conveys a lot. She leaves lots of gaps. Like she's not, like she's almost she's conveying like a full experience of depression, but she's doing it in a way that, like, to me, it's comprehensible. Like I don't suffer from depression. I know people who do, and so for me, like, you know, you want to be empathetic to people who have depression, and it's almost like this poem, in a sense, helps me understand it, the complexity of it. So, and this is kind of in keeping, like, I know I've shared some things that I've referred to as fractured narratives. Like this one, I would not call it fractured narrative. Like this one is simply, it's almost a composite. Like it takes the small details and allows the reader to kind of imagine, you know, the whole. So, like, that's basically the yeah. So if you look at the agenda, so in the agenda, I just put some ideas in there about that. The way it's linear in narrative, it's linear in design, but each of the pieces are quite different. Okay, so the other major thing on the assignment is just some time. I really want to give people a lot of time here, like to work on the individual projects. Now I noticed, okay, as far as the projects go, I know Peyton, you more or less had an idea coalesce for you last week.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so Olivia, with yours, there's one of the writers you mentioned I'm not familiar with, and I think you mentioned the Featherlight Prose.
Oh, I don't know. I just wrote that.
Yeah, but okay, can you recall which writer that was?
I think it was Leslie Walton.
Leslie Walton.
She's only written one book.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So for you, are you? Now this would be quite a wonderful artifact if you can kind of apply yourself to it. Is okay. Use that. Okay. To refer to another writer as their prose is feathery light. To me, is quite something.
I guess that's kind of an idiom.
Well,
no.
It could be an idiom, but it could be really precise too. But to me, it's just like what would create writing that you could, like if in your estimation her writing is feathery light.
I guess I meant the way she writes things is really like smooth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that'd be really cool. And like the focus of this artifact and the guiding question for this whole assignment topic is basically how can I learn from other writers?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can actually look closely at another writer's work and try to see how they do what they do. Like for example, the poem I just shared, the one with having it out with melancholy. That's something that you can learn from another writer. There's a lot of things that are complex, and I think they're too complex to try to capture it all in one go. But if you're trying to capture the complexity of depression, and you did it the way Jane Kenyon did, where you just look for the kind of telling details, which is another kind of expression that I've heard before. It's in the, like, I know most of us have heard the expression, the devil is in the details. And,
yeah.
And so why we use that term, the devil is in the details, to me has always meant it's in the small things that you get at the truth. That's the way I've always interpreted it. So with this idea of learning from other writers, like I know I shared something last week, which was something that Ivan Coyote, when interviewed about Ivan's writing process, talked about this idea of basically building up little rocks, little stones, or like Ivan referred to it as literary Doritos. So a Dorito is like a little snack food, and so you can eat lots of them. So to me, like just the idea that if in Ivan's case, Ivan was writing their memoir, and so if you were now Ivan's around 50, so if Ivan looking back on their life, like what are the telling details of a life lived as a trans person? And so you'd have to be somewhat selective in what you picked out, but the idea is that if you have a large enough kind of stock of things to write about, the ones that are the most important, I think, will emerge. So for today, like I just want people to have time to kind of work. Like I'm not sure if it's worth like I can set up another breakout room and just kind of talk with people individually. But like this artifact, we set a due date of next week, and I'm just hoping that people are well enough in the thought process to commit to something. So, and then now for the other people, okay, I'm going to screen share one more time because I just want to point out, like, if you want to work on a couple writing prompts, I have something ready. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to. Okay, so I'm in the group wiki, and under writing prompts for topic 4. All right, so I have some ideas here. If you want to play around with idiom, I just Googled idioms using the word out, and this little image, if you click on it, up pops this little image. And this actually came from an ESL website. And I used to, last couple of years, I was teaching in a regular school. I was teaching ELL, which is English Language Learners. And idioms are really, really troublesome for new learners of English. And like so I just type in the word out, but even like a lot of this out of sight, out of mind, to be out of sorts. Okay, that's a good one. Out of step, meaning like you don't fit in. Out of the ballpark, out of the blue. Like there are so many idioms using color. Out of the closet, out of the corner of my eye, out of the goodness of my heart, out of the loop, out of the norm. So if you're looking for some ideas for this project, for artifact number 4, you could play around with the idiom. And okay, one other idea I put together, and this is from the University of British Columbia, and I helped a learner with this last year who was applying to UBC, and this learner had 92-3% average, which is pretty high. But what's interesting with UBC is 95% students are not exceptional in terms of the people applying to UBC. And so what they're really trying to do, and so a significant portion of the application is completion of these questions. And there are 9 of them. And what's really interesting, these questions are really, as I put it, they're inviting you to tell a story. So like, what makes you unique? What has prepared you for UBC? What are your key experiences and interests? What sets you apart from other students with high grades? Which to me, that really gets at the heart of what they're trying to do here. What have you learned in life as opposed to what you have learned in school? What have you learned that you will never forget? What represents your achievements, passions, and experiences best? How have you grown and how have your perspectives matured? And I think this is the best question of the whole bunch. How have you made the most of your experiences and opportunities? So if you're to me, you could tell an anecdote, like a short little story account to cover any of those questions. But I think as a whole, like the 9 of them, I think are quite good. So this is in the writing prompts for topic 4. And I'll stop sharing. So I think at this point, what I'll do is I'll just set up a breakout room, and I'll just kind of pull people in and just kind of chat with you a little bit about the artifact 4. And like, for example, with Olivia, if you do pursue that idea of working with that one writer, the challenge would be to kind of get some passages of the work that you could comment on. Would you scan it into I'm just trying to figure out how you would get, like, you know, to save you having to type it in yourself. Or even, like, I've had learners take pictures of pages.
I could scan it, but I would have to get it from the library first.
Okay. Do you think is that something you can do within a week?
I'll try, but otherwise I would have to use something else.
Okay.
But that's not really a big deal to me.
Okay, you have a lot of ideas going? Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me set a breakout room, and I'll just kind of talk individually to people. And maybe today's class is shorter. And I just want to be confident that people can, like, we basically have 3 weeks left in the class. And I've left a lot of the work here to the end. And the last piece is simply just having some writing that you'd be willing to share in a little class anthology. And hopefully that's just a matter of selection and not writing new material. Okay, so I'm just going to set up a breakout room, and I'll chat with you individually. Okay, now I have a feeling what may happen, Peyton and Olivia, you may end up in the same room. You may just end up in a room. See if I can get this. Okay, here we go.
Hi.
Hi, Trinity.
By the way, I have the hiccups, so if you're hearing like weird noises as I'm talking, that's the button.
All right, so how are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Okay, now with your computer, could you screen share?
Yeah. What should I screen share?
I want you to get into your personal wiki space.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, is that working?
Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm going to do here? Okay. So yeah. So you're in the group wiki space right now. Okay. So just so you know, what you have to be able to do is you have to scroll up. Like this is the easiest way I find it. Keep going, and just click on the word pages. Okay, so this kicks you out of the group wiki.
Yeah.
I haven't found an easier way to do it.